Okay, I'm going to continue with this little series of whittling projects that they're not really beginner, but they are definitely a beginner to intermediate type project. If you're an intermediate to advanced carver, you know, these are great to keep your skills honed. They're great little projects that you can take with you. You know, just throw in a bag with a couple carving knives, and when you're on the road. This is a fun project. First of all, it's a little bit of a challenge, and it's also impressive. You can show your friends, and you can paint these up, and they make little Christmas ornaments, or you know, this could actually be the top of maybe a walking stick as an ornament on there. So once you learn how to carve this, you can use it in a lot of different ways. This is a little different because this one I continued the carving to the point where I went through, and you can actually see through it. And this is a little more challenging because this is in a softwood, this is basswood, and once you cut through on these little twists are pretty flexible, and it's all cross grain going down here. The grain is going this way, obviously, so this is all short grain, and it's very fragile, and as you try to, you know, carve the detail away on this and sand it or whatever, you know, you do stand a chance of breaking it, so you have to handle it carefully. Also, when you get to the bottom here, you know, you don't have a whole lot of area to work with your knife, and so it's an area where you can slip and cut yourself. So you do have to be careful with it. And one of the things that I try to do is get as a challenge to myself is to get these so that they're as consistent going down in their spiral and in their thickness and and shape and so forth. You can see here the space is tight right here, and then so on either side it's going to be off, and it throws the whole thing off. So you want to try to keep it even. Now here's one I did that I purposely did not carve all the way through so that it would break through. Kept this one a little tighter, and I also concentrated on trying to make this one a little more even. As I spin it around, you can see it's a little bit better. What I would do at this point would be to either sand or do a little more very, very light carving to try to get these as even as possible. You can challenge yourself even further by having these, as they spiral down, get thinner and thinner and thinner instead of stay the same diameter. So that's even more of a challenge. As far as the bottom, you can take it down to a very sharp point, or you can kind of round it over, which is what I've done here. So I want to show you how to lay this out. It's a technique I learned in an issue of Wood Carving Illustrated. So I didn't invent this, but it really is a great way to keep the spiral even on your layout. So I start with a block. This can be any kind of wood. Like I say, I'm using basswood here, but it can be anything. And what's great about this is it's easy to acquire a small piece like this. It's easy to carry around with you, and it's also a very little amount of wood for a lot of enjoyment in the carving for this small little piece. And you know, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do with a piece of wood like this, but I don't think you could come up with anything more interesting with a simple block this size. Okay, so I'm starting in this one. I have a 1-inch block. It's 1 inch by 1 inch, and it's 6 inches long. You can vary these. You could make this fatter, you could make this shorter, and they'll give you different variations on the spiral. But the same principle works on all of these. And I come down here, I'm coming down about 1.25 inches, but you could make this whatever you want. I saw on these I rounded it off, but you could put a face on there or some other kind of decoration, whatever you want. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start at these points right here where it crosses the line. Well, the first thing I have to do is I have to take my square, okay? And these little combo squares are great. If you have a little 6-inch one like this, very handy with these carvings. So I make a line there, and then I just carry it around, all the way around on all 4 sides, okay? And that becomes my 0 point for my taper. Now on the bottom end, I can either go to 0 or I can go to, you know, 1/8 or 1/4. I like 1/4 on the bottom. So since this is 1 inch, I'm actually coming in 3/8 from this side and 3/8 from this side. Okay, and that gives me a centered division down at the bottom. I don't really care what the actual number is, but I don't really want this to an exact point. So then I set my These little 6-inch rulers are very handy in carving projects. Cheap. And so I set this at my line that I marked on the bottom, scribe it up, flip it over, and I scribe it again. Okay? So now that gives me an even taper, and I'm going to follow that on all 4 sides, so I get the same kind of taper going on. Okay? Now, this is my waist. Okay? Right here. So now I can either carve that off or I can saw it off. I'm going to take this to the bandsaw and just cut that off on all 4 sides, so I have a tapered, squared tapered piece. Okay? And I'll show you that after I cut it. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cut this off with my saw, and the saw cut, was a little bit rough, so I sanded it. And part of the reason why I left a little something at the bottom, because when you sand it, then it's even less than what you laid out. So it's about 3/16 on the bottom now, which is good. I probably lost a little off of here too. So I'm going to go ahead and redo my lines up here on the top part. I'm going to flip it over so that I'm going to find the flat here. I can get this down here so I can. Okay, and I'm going to just carry this all the way around. So I need to have these a 0 mark at this corner right here. So, okay, so now I've done that. I'm basically going to be done with that square for now on this project. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go down the side of this, and I'm going to do a spiral. It's going to go at an angle from 0 to a 1/2 inch, and then that's going to be my angle. So if I mark along this edge here every 1/2 inch, okay, and I'm just going to carry this down. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it. Okay, and now at the end I can either mark this one or leave it off. Okay, and I go to the next corner and I do the same thing. So however accurate you can carve, you're only going to be as accurate as your marks here. Okay, so now you can see I've finished making my marks on the 1/2 inch, every 1/2 inch, starting from here down to the tip. Okay, now the next step is I'm going to go from on this first side. One thing you might want to do just for the heck of it is either label these 1, 2, 3, 4 or A, B, C, D, something like that, just so you can keep track of them. So I'm going to start on side A. I'm going to go from 0 to 1/2 inch. Okay. Then I'm going to take that from that 1/2 inch down to the second mark, which is 1 inch on the B side. Okay, and then I take that down to the next mark on the C side. So you can see how this spiral is forming. Okay, you carry that all the way down. Oops, I missed that one. I must have had my lid broke off there. Okay, so you continue on with that. Okay, then you go to the next side, start from 0 there. What you're going to have is 4 different strands that are spiraling down. I'm trying my best to keep this in your view while I'm have it where I can see it. Okay. You get the idea. I'll finish this. So here's my carving block with all the spiral lines indicated. And you can see, I made some mistakes, so the ruler slipped. So just, go ahead and fix them and try to get this as accurately as you can, meeting at each of these points, because that's going to help you when you do your carving. But even if the line isn't really meeting perfectly. It doesn't matter. They're just a guideline to show you where to carve. And then as you carve, you'll look at it and try to keep it as even as possible. And then at the bottom, like I said, there's a little extra down here. Doesn't matter. I could even carve this tip off later if I want. I can round it. You can do whatever you want with this. So the next step is going to be to start carving this, and I'll show you that in the next video. Take care.